Sir,
Yes.
I have a doubt. What is canon?
Oh, Canon. Canon to right of them. Canon to left of them. Canon in front of them. Volleyed and thundered.
Sir, ഇതെന്താ?
ഇത് കാനൻ കേട്ടിട്ടില്ലേ? ആൽഫ്രഡ് ലോർഡ് ടെൻസന്റെ ദ ചാർജ് ഓഫ് ദ ലൈറ്റ് ബ്രിഗേഡ്, അതിലെ വരികളാണ്.
സാർ, കാനൻ പീരങ്കിയല്ല ഞാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചത്.
പിന്നെ ജപ്പാൻകാരുടെ കാനൺ ക്യാമറയാണോ? അത് കരുണയുടെ ബുദ്ധിസ്റ്റ് ദേവതയുടെ പേരാണ്. കാനോൺ അങ്ങനെ എന്തോ. കമ്പനി തുടങ്ങിയപ്പോൾ അത് പൊട്ടിപ്പാളിസാവരുതേ എന്റെ കാനോൺ ദേവതയെ എന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ഇട്ട പേരാണ് കാനൺ.
അതല്ല സാർ, ലിറ്റററി കാനൻ.
ഓ, ഐ സി, കാനൻ. അങ്ങനെ തെളിച്ചു പറയൂ. ഐ ഷാൽ എക്സ്പ്ലെയിൻ. Hello dear students, this is Vishwas, and in this series we will discuss the origin stories of few terms that will pop up every now and then in your literature classes. We need to understand their history to understand the roles they play in the stories we read, hear and tell. Canon. Literary canon refers to the works of literature representative of a genre or time period. For example, Shakespearean canon includes all the works we believe to have been written by Shakespeare. Similarly, we can have the canon of Chaucer's works, Hemingway's works, and so on. We can also have the Western canon, which will include great literary works written mostly by the European authors.
Sir, how do you know that they are great? Who told us that they are great? Why is this collection of works called a canon?
The word canon comes from the Greek word canon, which meant a measuring rod and was used to denote the standard of excellence. The Greek word kena means cane, vadi, chural എന്നൊക്കെ പറയില്ലേ, cane. We have sugar cane, which in Hindi is ganna. The word canon came to be associated with rules and standards and was taken up by the church to refer to the declaration made by the church or the rules laid down by the church. Later, the church found out that many people who began to read and write had started creating their own versions of the biblical stories. The people were getting confused as to which texts to follow. The church intervened and declared that only the scriptures or texts which the church authenticates are to be read by the believers. So the clergy made a list of works which became the biblical canon. The works which were not selected were not to be given much importance. When the church began educational institutions, the works selected by the church became a part of the canon. The canon thus contained creations or books deemed worthy of being read by some authority. In this case, it was the church. Suppose you want to teach the students in your locality. How do you select which works are to be taught? What makes certain books special and certain others not so special? You can't possibly pick all the works as there are so many works to choose from. So you might want to look up the syllabus of various schools and universities to see what they teach. Then you might find that certain authors are present on most syllabuses, and there are some whose names you have not even heard of. Why is that? If you genuinely spend time on researching the syllabus of various universities, you might find that the syllabus of certain universities have changed drastically over the years, while some have remained more or less the same. Why? Who chooses the syllabus? Why do canons get established or why do they change? What we learn today as a part of the syllabus is a result of several negotiations of power. It is a choice made for us by several people. It could be the government, the various unions of teachers, the syndicates, the students' councils, the publishers, and so on. For a major part of the 20th century, the syllabus in most Indian universities were dominated by the Western canon, which consisted of works written predominantly by the white, European, male, straight authors. Awareness of privileged positions has also necessitated changes in the canons. What is privilege? The word privilege comes from the Latin term privilegium, which means a bill or law affecting an individual. The word privis means private and lex or leg means law. Privilege was initially used when certain persons were given exemption from obeying the laws of the land. The clergy were often given such privileges in England. According to the benefit of the clergy, or privilegium clericale in the English law, the clergy could only be tried for their crimes in a court appointed by the church and not in a civil court. This was also the major cause of concern between St. Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and King Henry II. The church tried to protect the clergy from the civil laws, which did not sit right with the king. The word privilege has not undergone much of a change from its original use. The general sense is that the ones with the privilege have an advantageous position over others in legal or in non-legal terms. Colonial history has privileged white over black, and the gender norms in our society has privileged male over female and the transgender. Social privilege can be influenced by one's caste, religion, or financial status. They need not be always about majority and minority, but sometimes they are. So coming back to canon, though canons help us in picking and classifying works and in familiarizing ourselves with the so-called best works of various time periods, we must be aware that they are there since someone chose them to be by excluding several others. As students of literature, it is our duty to be vigilant and ask questions about the merit of a work, the parameters used to determine the merit, and who chooses them. So students, get ready to fire your cannons at the canonical walls which are built on privileged positions. Another term which is used to denote the merit of a literary work is the classic. You have to read the classics, the teachers say. Homer's Odyssey is a classic. The Godfather by Mario Puzo is another classic. The Guide by R.K. Narayan is also a classic. Classics form a major part of various canons. They are the works that are read, reread, and are almost always part of critical discussions since their publication. They never lose their value. Hence, they are included in various curriculums. These are works which stand out because of their content, the plot, the characters, the language used by the author, the narrative techniques, or due to the socio-political relevance of the text, or a combination of all of these. The word classics is derived from the Latin adjective classicus, which was used to refer to the people belonging to the highest class in the Roman society. It was then used in literary criticism to denote writers of the highest quality. Later, it entered the educational system and was used to refer to the standard texts used in the curriculum. The students were advised to imitate the classics. Ancient works like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, then Virgil's Aeneid, became eternally labeled as the classics in Western literature. The Italian novelist Italo Calvino, in his book Why Read the Classics, defends great literature by citing 14 reasons. The term classic is generally applied to great books, irrespective of the time when they were written. According to Calvino, a classic is a book that has never finished saying what it has to say. Let us now look at a modern classic. It is a modern classic written in the medieval period. What are you saying, sir? Well, compared to Homer, who wrote around the 8th century BCE, before Common Era, or Virgil, who wrote around the 1st century BCE, Chaucer, who wrote in the 14th century CE, Common Era, is modern. But for us, this was the medieval period. So one question every student of literature who studies the Canterbury Tales or its prologue fails in their exams is the one regarding the ecclesiastical characters. The question goes like this. You give a brief description of the ecclesiastical characters of the prologue to the Canterbury Tales. Ecclesiastical? Yes. The word ecclesiastical is an adjective used to refer to the Christian church and the clergy. An ecclesiastic is a person who holds an office in the church. This term came from Greece. The Greek word for assembly was ecclesia. Young Athenian men aged 18 who proved that they were not slaves and that their parents were Athenian were enrolled in the assembly list. They could speak their mind about the affairs of the state in the assembly. Hence, ecclesiastic came to be used to refer to a speaker in an assembly and later to a speaker in a congregation or a church or a preacher. The Greeks used another word for the assembly, which is also in use. This was demos. Demos meant people or the village, and most importantly, the assembly of citizens that governed the state. Kratos means rule. Hence, we have democracy, the rule by the people. We began by saying that the word ecclesiastical is an adjective used to refer to the Christian church and the clergy. What is the etymology of clergy? Clergy comes from the Greek word klerikos, which was used in connection with inheritance. The basic idea was that clerics, who were to lead a pious life, did not have an inheritance apart from that of the Lord. They can't hold private property, or they can't have private inheritance. That is the basic meaning of this term. The word clerk, which we now use to call someone, to refer to someone who keeps records and does works like accounting in an office, originally meant someone who was working for the church. Reading and writing was initially done by the clergy, and they were the ones who kept the records and acted as scribes. The word scribe is used to refer to the act of writing and also to the people who wrote and kept records. They were also known as scribes. When you approve something by signing at the bottom of a page or sign underneath a written statement, you subscribe to it.